Good afternoon, everybody, or wherever you may be. Good morning if you're over on the west. Today's live stream, we're going to be talking about some not so obvious hidden beneath the surface functionality in Capture One, which is very useful, might save you a bit of time, help you to do things a little bit quicker, but just not so visible or easy to pick up. So that's the plan for today. If you are in our live streaming room and you want to ask a question, you can do so by entering one into the Q&A tab. There's also Helen online as well, who's helping us out. So you may find her answering questions in the Q&A tab as well. If you want to have a bit more space, you can hit that down arrow and then you'll see Capture One larger on the screen as well. If you're on YouTube or LinkedIn, then of course you can do the same. You can put a question in the comments, and then we'll be able to see those as well. So let's get started. So as I said today, this is kind of a mix of various different tips and tricks, and I've got around 10 different things to go through. Probably only take us about 40 minutes, maybe even a little bit quicker. I've assumed you don't know any of these, so some of them might be rather obvious, some of them might be less obvious, but I'm always surprised when I can get complacent, if you like, and assume everybody knows a certain thing when they actually don't. So first of all, I'm going to talk about right-clicking, which may sound a little bit odd, but quite a lot of the time when you are using the cursor tools up here, of which there are many, you know, when you click through some of these, you'll find a bunch of cursor tools, that you can get some interesting contextual menu options when you right click. So if we start with something really basic with the pan tool, like so, if you're zoomed into 100% and you right click, then you get a little navigator, a temporary navigator which pops up on screen. So if you want to move around the image nice and quick without necessarily having to do this with your mouse or pen, right click, pick it up, and then you can find that spot. Obviously, if you're not zoomed in, then you're just going to see the whole thing. But obviously, the more you zoom in, so if I go super tight, then you get a smaller square and away you go. Now, it's quite a nice way if you just want to scan around the image, like looking for dust spots or other things you need to correct. It's kind of a good way just to move around the image without just having to drag and drop. So that's the first one. Now, not surprisingly, if we grab the crop tool, let's just zoom out a second. If we grab the crop tool, if you right click, you actually end up with the actual crop tool, which you would normally find in the shape tool tab, just pop up temporarily on screen. And this can be really useful for a couple of things. First of all, just if you want to reset the crop, like so, saves you having to go elsewhere. We've got the ability to change our ratio as well. So let's just go 2:3 as an example and change our aspect ratio. If you hadn't spotted it, there's a new just don't want to deafen you with a cough. If you haven't spotted it, there's a new little button here which flips the orientation or rotates it. So that popped up a couple of releases ago, minor releases ago. So if we tap that, that will actually switch from 2:3 3:2 rather, to 2:3. Formerly, what you had to do was grab your crop and sort of squish it into the other orientation. But what is really useful, if you've applied the same crop to a bunch of images, but you're moving between landscape and portrait, then this is a faster way just to get to an image and flip it. And again, without having to open the crop tool or go to the shape tab, there is actually a shortcut for this as well. We're going to talk about more about shortcuts later, but just to show you now, if we go to Edit Keyboard Shortcuts and we type in switch crop orientation, there we go. Let's try Shift Command C. Is that being used? No, that's being used by copy. Option Command C. Set as capture collection. Let's just use that for now. So now if I do my shortcut, then it flips my crop like so. So very easily, as you're moving through images, and if they're cropped and you just want to switch it, then you can do so nice and quickly using your shortcut key. You can also turn this guy on, so crop outside image. If you weren't aware of that, it just means if you've done some rotation, you can actually get outside the image and then fill that in later with the tool of your choice. Okay, checks notes, other ones which you might not be aware of. Let's go to the curves. So there's a picker in the curve tool, which is just again another cursor tool. So if I grab that, the purpose of this picker is to say, okay, I would like to adjust the tonal range here, for example. I'll try and pick a spot where you can see it. If I click once, then it will add a lock point or a control point on the curve for me. Now, if I right click with this, it actually opens up a little mini curve tool. So if you prefer to look at the image whilst you're adjusting the curve, then this can kind of give you a nice way to stay close or in eye contact with the image and have the curve tool up at the same time as well. So you'll need your curve cursor tool to do so, but there is a shortcut for that, and you'll see I've got it set to U, like so. So if I'm on my pan tool, come out, hit U on my keyboard, right click, and then I've got the curve tool where I can start tweaking straight away. Also, levels, maybe less of a use for this one, but similar thing. There is a shadow and highlight pick at either end. Again, if you've got one of those selected and right click, you'll get a little mini levels tool up as well, where you can play around with. So have an experiment. You'll probably find that a lot of the cursor tools bring things up. So this is the annotations tool as an example. Copy and apply doesn't, so you'll just see the general right click menu when that pops up. Obviously with your brushes, you're going to get your brush settings and so forth. With the straighten tool, so if I draw straighten across to level this, if we right click, we actually get the rotation and flip tool as well, like so. So all kinds of useful and surprising things pop up when you right click. Just check for a question. Matthew was asking about the library tab. How do you make that larger and longer? Well, just remember, usability wise, you've got this pinned area and the scrolling area. So if you look in my library tab, everything is in the scrolling area. So it means that if I make stuff bigger, then I can scroll. So that's what I would do personally, because if it's in the pinned area, so if we say move to pinned, then you end up with it kind of stuck in the top here like so. You can probably make it, no, it's on its maximum size. If I say auto, it gets a little bit bigger. So you could also try that. All right, so right click, remember that. Now, as we were talking about cropping, let's go back to that. There's a few modifier keys that you can use. I was pausing because I just saw a question on YouTube, which was the right time to answer it. So there's a few modifier keys you can use. The first one being like a center lock. So to explain what I mean, is that in focus? Near enough. Close enough. So what I mean is, let's move the microphone out the way. If you hold down your Option key, this one here, or Alt if you're on a PC, and drag from the corner, then it locks the center of the crop. So if we've got our man in the middle here and then we drag from the corner, then it's going to lock that point. If we drag from the side, it's going to do the same thing, like so. So it doesn't matter where you drag from, it's going to lock about that center. Now if we do Command as an example, then this allows you to force rotate at any point. So normally if you hover your cursor just outside of the crop tool, you can then rotate as you wish. If you hold Command down on your keyboard at any point, then you can force rotate immediately regardless of where your cursor is, like so. Unsurprisingly, shift locks your aspect ratio. So if I'm on 2:3, my aspect ratio is also locked. If I go, to unconstrained, and then obviously I've got full carte blanche here, like so. Let me just try something. Yeah, and if you are unconstrained, if you do command, sorry, not command, I have to get the right one, option, and you're unconstrained, then it will actually lock the opposing handle. So you can do this. So now if I went up the top, again, it would lock the opposing handle if you are on unconstrained, like so. Again, as we are on unconstrained, if I hold shift down, then it will lock the current aspect ratio, whatever that may be. Okay, now there's one last thing which might relate to your question, David. So David says, when I crop on occasion, I start a crop too close to an edge and then I can't use a click and drag crop. I have to work out from the edge. So a couple of things that might help you. First of all, if you've made a crop and you want to adjust it and disregard it, if you hold down shift over here, then you can simply start drawing another crop straight away. So even in the middle, like so. So if you decided that's a terrible crop, I can just hold down shift and immediately be able to draw another one. Or even if instead of moving the crop around, again, if I hold down shift, I can instantly override that particular crop. Now, if you're getting too close to the edge, David, if you turn this guy on, which is the proof margin, then it gives you a fatter margin around the side. You can use X on your keyboard to do that as well. And that can be useful for a number of things. Again, it might stop you straying into like moving the tool, expanding the tool area. So this just means that you're much more able to grab nearer the edge. So I would do that. So that's your proof margin. You can also adjust that in the settings under appearance, and you'll see by default the normal margin is 3 pixels. So if you find the standard margin is just too small, you can change that. And then the proof margin size you can also adjust with this slider as well. It's also handy if you're doing any brush work like masking, dodging, burning, etc., and you're doing something right in a corner. You might find it easier to do so with the proof margin turned on. So yeah, it's actually a pretty handy little addition, maybe not so well known. Okay, so that's cropping. Lots of stuff that you can do with that. Also, oh no, we're going to come to shortcut keys in a second. Before we mention that, we're going to talk about the color editor, which I'm sure you all know and use quite well. And the basic color editor is pretty easy to figure out. Let's get rid of that keyboard now. The basic color editor is pretty easy to figure out. You pick a swatch, you drag the sliders to edit the color as you see fit. However, you might find an easier way to do that. If you haven't used the picker before, this one down here, you can use this to obviously pick the color tone that you want to edit if you're not sure what you should be doing. But what you can also do is use this as a direct color editor. Now what will happen is, and it looks slightly different on the live stream to how it will for you if you try this at home, is if you click and hold on the color you want to edit, you'll see a little 4-way cursor tool pop up. Now on my screen it's disappeared, but the live stream still captures the invisible cursor somehow. But the intended behavior is that after a few seconds it disappears, just so you can focus on the image. Now what it means I can do is that if I drag my mouse left, then I can bring the hue into that direction. And don't forget, the color of the slider indicates what your target color is going to transform to. If I drag to the right, then it moves the slider to the right, and then we get that instant color change. If I go up and down, we can make our selected colors brighter, more saturated or less saturated, like so. Now using a modifier key, so if you use your Alt or Option key, like so, and do the same thing once more, now I can affect lightness, like so. So holding that modifier affects lightness. Now I'm going to just keep my finger on my mouse for a second. Now if you look at the color editor itself, you can see you've got two color patches that are selected. So far left and second from the right. So when you're using the color editor, you're actually editing a couple of color ranges at the same time, which is super, super handy, which you can't do manually. So not only is it a little bit faster to work using the direct color editor, just by making minor changes, you're actually getting a better color adjustment. So keep that in mind. Now, if you right click in this case, you'll actually end up with some preferences that you can change. So by default, hue is horizontal, saturation vertical, lightness with a modifier, and horizontal as well. But you can switch that round to what makes sense. The sensitivity is how much of a broad stroke you need to do to move the slider itself. So by default it's 50, so you might find you're having to do bigger mouse movements. 100, then it's kind of a bit finer, but it's up to you. William says, okay, that color editor tip is perfect. Yeah, it's super handy. It's been there for a long time, but unless you accidentally long pressed with that particular cursor tool active, you might not self-discover it. How many pixels? I don't know actually, Robert. I've got a feeling it depends on the resolution, sorry, on the zoom level. So as we're zoomed out, it'll pick a broader patch. If you're zoomed in, it will be a bit more critical, but don't quote me on that. I can't remember fully, unfortunately. How does this work for skin tone, Peter is asking? Well, it'll work on any color, but if you want to use the skin tone tab, then you've got to do it the old traditional way. So by picking the skin tone, obviously not a skin tone here, and then using the uniformity sliders to even it out. But it's just for the basic color editor. But it's super handy and super fast, so give it a try. Janelle says, bit of a side question, when I select styles, it pops onto my image and covers it up. How do I avoid this? Because you are probably going up, I don't even know where it is. You're probably doing this, which you shouldn't be doing, because that's like an old legacy way of adding styles, which we should just get rid of, to be honest. You want to be using the styles tool, because then your styles will be available here and you can just roll over them in particular. So use the styles and presets tool. If you don't see that tool, you can right click on a tool tab and add it. But yeah, don't use the menu system, because that's just a really slow way to access styles, so don't do that. Okay, shortcut keys. Moving on from direct color editor. Shortcut keys, you don't have to remember tons of them. I would say if you can remember 4 or 5, then you're going to move around Capture One a bit quicker. My kind of go-to shortcut keys are C for crop. So let's just stick this back up. C for crop, easy to remember. If you don't know what the shortcut keys are, I'll tell you another good way in a minute, but if you hover over the cursor tools, then you'll see your shortcut key like so. So C for crop, H for the pan tool, so I can double click and zoom in and out. Basic ones like Command B or Control B if you're on PC to hide and show the browser, Command T to hide and show the tools. F for full screen, and I know on Windows it's not quite as full as that, so apologies, it's like a semi full screen. And then this one, my most favored one, is to hide and show the viewer. So if you're browsing a big collection of images, let's just go to a big collection like so, and you decide, okay, I want to open up this one to edit. Tap this and then that hides the viewer. Now by default it's G on your keyboard. So I've changed it because I find ergonomically the one sitting under the escape key is a little bit easier to use, ergonomically wise. Now, if you want to change it, again, it's edit keyboard shortcuts. You can't change the default set, so you'll make your own set using the plus button up here. And then you will find a bewildering amount of shortcuts that you can use. The easiest thing to do is just to use the search. So if I type in view, you'll see show hide viewer, and there's my set key, which is this one. Depending on your language, keyboard layout, this can be a variety of different things. This is a period, I think sometimes it's a comma, whatever, it doesn't matter. Suffice to say, in my daily life of typing, I never use a period symbol, but it works really well for hiding and showing the viewer like so. And that's just a much faster way to move around. When you double click, then it will automatically show the viewer anyway, so you don't have to manually. So once I hide it, no key press. Once I double click, it's going to open up the viewer again. So G for the default, but I just find it much more useful over there. If you want to have a quick look at what your shortcuts are, you've got a list down here. So list shortcuts, and then that will open up a web page with all your customized shortcuts. So you can print it out and stick it to a mirror and commit it to memory. But if you can remember just those few to help you move around the application a little bit better, then I think that will save everyone a whole bunch of time. Another one which I covered last week, if you're doing a lot of brush work or layers work, yes, you can right click to change the different brush parameters like size, hardness, opacity. You can also, without entering that tool, hold down Control and Option, or Control and Out on a PC. If I drag left and drag right, that will change the size. It looks horribly jerky on the live stream, but it's super smooth on when you'll do it. If you go up, then you'll change the hardness, so hard brush, soft brush. If bit of a spider control, you do Shift Control Option. Now you can change the flow and opacity by going up and down for flow, left and right for opacity. If you're on a PC, you have to right click to do this as well. Just a slight warning. So generally I use this shortcut quite a bit because it's very easy to change the size and softness. I tend to do this one less because it's a little bit tricky to get all three fingers on those buttons, but equally sometimes it's nice and quick just to right click to go into that menu. Don't be wasting your time going over here, clicking that button, changing the size, going back to the image. That's just a really slow way to do it. All right, going back to the shortcut menu, there's another one which popped up a couple of releases ago, custom shortcuts. So these allow you to bind a shortcut to a specific command, again for working a bit faster. So these are adding a style, selecting a style brush, opening with into another application, editing into another application, or changing your aspect ratio. So you can see I've got a clarity style brush on Shift Command 7. So if I hit, let's just go back to the pan cursor tool. So if I hit Shift Command 7 on my keyboard, Shift Command 7, like so, straight away it selects my clarity plus brush, like so. You'll notice if we go back to edit keyboard shortcuts, there's also apply style, Shift Command 6, Shift Command 6, like so, and that's added that style. Now most of us, or statistically, we know this from analytics and surveying, that most of us use probably 2 or 3 go-to styles. So if you can remember, like my top 3 styles are 1, 2 and 3 as an example, 7, 8 and 9, whatever, then that's a good way to just apply a style. Again, Janelle, you might find that handy rather than go into the styles tool and trying to find it. It will actually show, if I can find that style, which one was it? Custom presets. Custom styles. Can't remember which one it was, which I did. Edit keyboard shortcuts. It is F202. Can't remember. I think that's Beyond Film. Yes, Beyond Film, Standard Film. There we go. So it's got a little reminder of my shortcut key as well. So if you do forget, then you'll see your shortcut key up on there too. Also, let me just check I didn't miss anything in customizable. Style brush, very useful. Apply style, yep. Open with and edit with saves you having to do a right click over here and saying edit with Photoshop or another application of your choice. So that's just helps speed things along a bit. But there's no limit to what you can do here. The limit is, of course, you run out of keys on your keyboard and key combinations, which you can remember. But as I said, if it's just a choice of 2 or 3 styles, your kind of go-to style brushes, then it can help you move a lot quicker. I don't tend to use it much in my daily life because if I'm just banging shortcut keys, then you've got no idea of what's going on. So I generally, if you're wondering why, David, why don't you have 20 shortcuts here? Because as a teaching exercise, it would be pretty frustrating for you. Okay, speed edit. Before we talk about speed edit, let's just make sure they're all reset and just check on the question side of things. David said I had X set to something. Can I repeat? Yeah, so it's the proof margin. So if we just select one, it's this little button up here, proof margin, like so. Just gives you a bit more real estate around the image. If you press X, then that's the default for that one. You can also right click here and say, okay, I want to change the color. A lot of us prefer editing with a white background, especially if you're going to print. If you just look at this image as an example, if we go back to black, look at that. What do you think? Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, if I go to white, then I might think, you know what, that sky's a bit dark for my liking. So it does have an influence on your editing density. I'm also staring at a big LED light, which doesn't help focusing on the screen either. That's a good tip, David was saying. Custom shortcut is Shift A to create a new empty layer. Yeah, exactly. To save going up here and saying plus, then again, search for that in your keyboard shortcuts, and then you can add layer straight away. So great tip. Yeah, so that was that one. Let's just put it back to black for now. So speed edit, which has been around for quite a few years now, but I'm still surprised at the number of people who don't know what speed edit is. If you don't know what it is, actually, give us a shout on the chat out of interest. Speed edit was designed to help with mass editing of images, especially if you just needed to do quick basic edits, tweak the exposure, change the white balance a bit, etc. on either a quantity of images at once or very quickly moving through a bunch of images. And what speed edit does, it turns your keyboard into the ability to very quickly switch between editing tools. So you'll see if you look at those shortcuts, they are concentrated on the left hand side of the keyboard. If you're a lefty and you use your mouse on your left hand, you could move them to the right hand side if that makes more sense. But the adjustments available are the standard ones: exposure, high dynamic range, white balance, and so forth. Some have a shortcut key defined by default, some you can add yourself. So if we take this set of images, let me just check something is on, and I hold down Q on my keyboard. So Q is exposure, remember. Straight away you'll see a little exposure slider pop up underneath each image. Now if I click and drag anywhere on this image, left or right, then that essentially turns the image into a giant exposure slider, like so. Now once again my cursor disappears when I drag, but it stays broadcasting on the live stream, which is really quite handy because you can see what I'm doing, which is good. And if I wanted to warm everything up, if I hold down 1, Kelvin pops up, and then as I drag, it will warm up or cool down. Now, the interesting thing about speed edit is that it doesn't change all the values to the same values. It's an additive or a subtractive process. So if this was, if I just hit Command R to reset everything, if you can see they all have varying different values. Let's say the camera was on auto white balance and it had done a pretty good job of neutralizing everything and I was happy with that, but I just wanted a bit more of a warmer look or whatever, then I can simply do that, which is different to copy and apply, because copy and apply will copy the same value and apply that to a group of images. Now I've got varying different levels of white balance, which allows me to add that accumulative amount. Again, if the exposure was varying amongst different pictures, it would just add on or subtract, not equalize. On the subject of exposure, you might be looking at this set of pictures and think, that's fine, but the bottom two are maybe a little bit too dark for the sequence. So can we brighten these two up independently, but keep the other images on the screen so I can, balance up a set? Let's hide the tools as well. Yes, you can. And that highlights this often misunderstood feature called Edit All Selected Variants. What this means is if it's checked on, like it is now, do the action to all the selected images. And that means things like adding a star rating, adding a color tag, rotating the image by 90 degrees, and a few other things. It does not apply just by going to a tool and dragging a slider. So that only ever happens on the primary variant, which is the one with the bigger white box on it. So now if I turn this off and hold down Q once more, you'll see the exposure bar is now only under that primary. So if I want to bump that up a bit, I can flick over to that image and then kind of equalize everything up to my satisfaction. So that's with that off. So now I can keep multiple images up on the screen and then balance and tune them and so forth. If I want to affect all of them again, I turn Edit All Selected Variants back on. And now if I hold Q down, you can see I'm affecting everything. But now as they have different exposures, as I increase, it will just add to that amount. So that's a really handy function. I'm sure many of you have turned that off by accident and then wondered why only one image was exporting when you selected 50. Why was only one rotating when you thought you could rotate all of them? So you have turned that off. If you like a bit more of a visual aid, you can right click to customize the toolbar anywhere in the blank space. And then you can find Edit All Selected and stick it up there. And now it goes orange when it's active. So that's a very good visual indicator. It used to be on the toolbar, but we took it away because people kept turning it off and not wondering what was going on. Part of me thinks we should have left it there. But if you didn't know what it was for, now you do. It's a very useful little additional tool. It's great if you're star rating and color tagging, for example. If I have Edit All selected on and I press 1 for 1 star over here, everything is now tagged as 1 star. If I turn this off, then it means I can move through a selection of images like this and independently be able to change their star rating or color tag like so. So let's change those for different colors without affecting the whole selection. Because sometimes it's nice, certainly when we've got similar pictures like this. Okay, out of these two, do I have one which I prefer? I'm not sure, but I think I prefer this one. So then I would tag that and then that one red as an example. And even in this multi-view situation, you can still zoom in and check on things. So if we wanted to check their expressions, what do I prefer? They're almost identical, composition-wise, almost identical. I'll take this one. So this little Edit Selected button is actually very powerful, often misunderstood, but it does have its uses. And remember, if you're doing something where it's only happening to one, you have probably turned that option off. So I'd be really interested to know if you've never used Speed Edit before, because it's a great little addition. Roger says, edit all selected variances, also used when deleting. Yeah, just a quick warning. So if I'd selected all of these and then hit the delete, or remove variants or whatever, or up here under, where is it? Can't even remember. I'm so used to doing that with a shortcut, I'm not sure. If you don't know where it is in the menu, you can just type in delete, and there you go, delete from disk down there. And that would affect all of them, yes. But if you had edit selected off, it would only be the primary one. So this one here, as an example. Cool, that's speed edit. Checking those questions. That's good. No one's admitting that they hadn't used speed edit before. So I don't believe everybody has used speed edit, but we shall see. Changing subject dramatically. Dust removal. It's always been here, but it was a manual operation. You had to pick this little circle and then kind of go around dust busting various different dust spots, which is a boring job, very laborious. Nobody likes dust spotting images. This one is particularly spotty, mostly because it's shot at f/22, so the tighter your aperture, the more likely you are to see dust spots. So portrait photographers shooting wide open can rejoice. This one you see has got a variety of dust spots kind of splattered all over the image like so. So all you need to do now is hit remove dust. Using a little bit of AI modeling technology, then it will detect all the dust spots and get rid of them, as you can see. Now, if you've got a particularly chunky one, which was around here somewhere, let's reset it. This guy. So let's just say remove dust again. It's this one here. So you could just about see it faintly. So if you've got something chunky like that or a hair, you might just want to hit it with the heel brush. So if I grab the heel brush and just do that, like so, then we can get rid of those kinds of things. But for the general nasty little spots, it does a great job. Now, if you haven't used this in a while or been put off because you thought the dust removal algorithm wasn't great, you'd be exactly right, because in times of old, when you manually got rid of a dust spot, it would kind of blur and smudge the image a little bit, which wasn't great, but that algorithm was updated when we added the automatic dust removal. So if I just temporarily reset that, like so, you can see that it blends in really nicely, like noise-wise or film grain or whatever. You'd never know there was a dust spot there. So try that out. I mean, fortunately these days with cameras having sensor cleaning and so on, the likelihood of getting mucky sensors is a lot less. But when you do, it's a really horrible job to do it. Oh good, some people have been brave and admitted it. Speed edit will be a great time saver. Didn't know about speed edit. I never did, so that's good. So I'm glad, because it's a really funky feature. It might take you a little bit of usage to get quick with it, but Alex, our product manager, he absolutely flies through edits when he's using speed edit, because it's muscle memory now and he's so accustomed and used to doing it. Actually, a good question from Anthony. Just jumped on. Have you talked about new features on C1 Mobile? I haven't, so that's not the subject for today, but that's a very good suggestion, and I will do that soon, because if you are a Capture One Mobile user, looks for iPad, it's not on the desk somewhere, we've added layers and masks to Capture One Mobile. So if you've got an Apple Pen as well, you can mask directly on your iPad, which is great. And also on the iPhone as well, let's not forget that. So layers and masks are there on Capture One Mobile. So if you haven't updated, go and try that out. All right, last two things, I think. Yeah, 2 things, 3 things, depending on time. Easy one, changing default. So this is particularly good for things like sharpening. Let's go to the background layer. Oh, there's also shortcuts for go to background or image layer, cycle through layers as well. So if you do a lot of layer work and you don't want to have to manually find the tool or select, don't forget your layer stack is also shown up here. So rather than going adjust, switch layers or whatever, just choose it from the menu here. But you can set shortcuts for cycle layers, go to background, sorry, image layer as it's called now. Old habits die hard. Changing defaults. So if we look for this particular image, it was shot with a Sony a7R Mark III. So our defaults for sharpening is this. Now, if you think that's too much or not enough, you can change that and you can say save as defaults. So now whenever you import or shoot tethered with the same camera, it will use those defaults. It won't retrospectively change every image that you have, so don't worry about that. It will be from this point forward, importing or tethered capture will use those defaults. And you can do that on a lot of tools. So even if we go to something like clarity, we could save that as a default. So if you always want to have X points clarity or X points contrast, you can simply save that as a default. Now, if you're doing a lot of different adjustments, you might prefer to have that as a style. But for one or two, like sharpening on noise reduction, then you can just save those as the defaults. Keeping the tool on screen, not referring to me. Let's just sort out my workspace as I've messed things up a bit. That's better. Tool on screen. So if we just bring out exposure for a second, hopefully you know some of the little shortcuts with relating to tools. Double click anywhere on the slider bar, it takes you back to 0. If you want to see the effect of a given adjustment, you can long press on the title of the slider. So now I can see what contrast is doing for this particular image. If you want to see what the entire tool is doing as a temporary reset, again, if you hold your Option key down or Alt or Windows and click on the reset button, you can see before and after, like so. Don't forget Y on your keyboard gives you the entire before and after swipe as well. So Y on your keyboard for before and after. Command Y, if I haven't changed it. Yes, I did. I think by default Command Y switches between slider and full view, but maybe I changed it to something. Yeah, I must have done. I tend to like the slider bar anyway, so, but you can just do a full view if you wish, like so. Full view, on and off. But I don't know, there's something about the slider bar which is quite satisfying, I think. So yeah, Option click for before and after of the whole tool. Whoops. If you accidentally reset, just do Command Z for undo, and then you'll get yourself out of that embarrassing hole if you accidentally reset it. So yeah, long press, double click to reset, Alt click to temporarily reset. All very, very useful all the time. The last one, which is a little bit on the kind of nerdy side, but someone actually mentioned it this morning and said, don't forget to talk about that because I find it really useful, which is the ability to select by file name list. So let's think of the scenario, let's turn that off. Let's think of the scenario that you've shot 300 pictures, you've sent them to your client, and they've come back and said, I want number 1, number 17, number 302, number 5, and so on. Now you can painstakingly scroll through your list of images, color tagging them or star rating them, or you can simply use this function and upload the numbers to this little window here. So if I type in, I didn't prepare for this, sorry, I didn't think I'd have time, but if I type in 236 and 242 and 245, like so, and say OK, then it will select those images instantly for me. And then I can do a further thing by right clicking and saying create an album from my selection. There's other options. Select the collection and just call this pics as an example. Add those images, OK. And now in my library tool, I've got a collection made with those images. So select by file name list. Note this little drop down menu here. How are you separating out the file names? I did that on a new line each time. You can also do it by comma. So if you've got comma separated values in a CSV sheet, semicolons or spaces. And this one is really smart and useful. Ignore the file extension. So if you've sent JPEG proofs and they sent you the whole file name back with the JPEG, don't strip out .jpeg. Just turn on ignore file extension like so. And then that way, you don't have to worry about that your JPEG doesn't match with the .arw. So select by file name list, really, really useful. And finally, you've also got some handy things. Right click, select by same. So if you wanted to select all the other greens, you can right click and say select all my greens. Different way to filtering, but actually can be useful. Where I find it the most useful is if you're doing like a color and a black and white, I can select all and say, give me a new variant. So now I've got the second variant of each image and it automatically selects those and deselect the others. Then I could hit that with a style. What was my style shortcut again? Can't remember. Shift Command 6. So if I hit Shift Command 6, then it will add that style. Oh, that wasn't a black and white. Hang on, let's just go ahead and pick a black and white. Black and white, punchy. Let's go punchy like so. So now I've got my color and my black and white of each one. If I wanted to select all the black and whites, I can right click and say select by same variant position. Now I've got all my black and whites. Quick speed edit, for example, I like them a bit darker and a bit more contrastier, so I could do a quick speed edit change like so. So select by same variant position is actually really handy. Anthony, are sharpening defaults camera or lens specific? Camera. So again, that's maybe an interesting case if you always shoot with one lens, which you find is a bit on the sharp side. A couple of my Sony lenses, I actually back off the sharpening because it's too much. I don't know what particular. So these, see, this to me is like a nice level of sharpening. It's not too aggressive and so forth. But on a couple of lenses that I've got, it's just a bit too much. So I prefer to soften it off a bit, especially with people and everything. You don't need people's facial features to be desperately jumping out the screen at you. So yeah, it's personal preference as well. William says, add to file name list. Love that. Truly missed it. Yeah, it's been there for, I don't know, probably 3 years or something like that. But again, whole point of this, hidden gems, they are hidden, probably not intentionally. So select by, yep. And also select by same is here as well. It's actually a menu worth digging through and just seeing what each one does, because there's quite a few little handy time savers in there as well. But select by file name list is super useful. Yeah, variant position. Yeah, definitely. Because if you end up with a variant shot like this and there's 300 pictures, kind of individually saving each one is a bit annoying. So if I did that again, select by variant position, right click, create albums from selection, call this black and white shots, like so. Select collection after creation, boom, there you go. So a lot faster than trying to do it manually. Okay, last quick check of questions. Is there a speed edit for batch rename? Not quite sure what you mean, but if you want a batch rename, you can right click and say batch rename. So if I do that, so I've got a warning saying it's going to change their name on disk. If I do that, then I can either use text and tokens or a find and replace. So if you've spelt someone's name wrong, say Bob was meant to be Sue or whatever, then it will find that in the file name and change it. So if I put DSC as an example, and then replace that with DSB, then it would change DSC to DSB as an example. But yeah, if you've got someone's name wrong or you've put the date wrong or something like that, then that's kind of a nice way to fix it. So yeah, batch rename. What's the shortcut for changing the color tags? By default, I think, Lisa, it's a bit of an annoying one. I believe it is plus minus, which is a bit useless on a Mac keyboard because sometimes it ends up being equal. And star, maybe. I think plus is green, minus is red, star is yellow. I prefer, if you've got a numerical keypad, is put them over here. So I do green, yellow, red, 6 for none, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for star ratings. So if you go into Edit Keyboard Shortcuts, let's just type in green as an example. So color tag is green. Yeah, I've got 7. If you want to then find the others, okay, it's in Adjustments, color tag. So if I clear that, Adjustments, color tag, yeah, none is 6, red 9, yellow 7, 8. Star ratings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then you've got all your tagging possibilities over here. So green, yellow, red, nothing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0. So everything is done over here. You could do plus minus star over here. I just find it much easier to have 7, 8 and 9. So I'd go for that personally. All right. Little word of warning, maybe warning's not the right word, excitement. There will be another live stream on Tuesday. It's not quite up yet, it will be tomorrow. But if you scan that QR code, that will take you to the live stream page. If you're logged in, you can also hit the follow button and then you'll be notified when new live streams come up. So tomorrow you'll see a live stream which is going to preview what's coming in Capture One. And there's a couple of super exciting additions. I think one of the most exciting things we've done in a long time, actually. AI masking was pretty exciting, but this is equally as exciting, if not more. So hopefully that will tempt you to come along on Tuesday. Just keep an eye out on that page tomorrow sometime, and then you can sign up. If you followed the page, you'll get an email notification anyway. So yeah, hopefully see you on Tuesday. You don't want to miss it. This sounds very dramatic, but I think there's a great tool which all of you can use. All right, Helen's put the link for the live stream page in the chat there. And yeah, if you scan that QR code, if you're on YouTube or use that link, you'll find it. William says, any hints? If you like color grading, then yeah, come along and watch it. If you like making your life easier, come along and watch it. If you like doing things with massive speed, then come along and watch it. So yeah, hopefully the link will be up tomorrow and then sign up for that. Great, thanks for your time today. If you want to watch anything again, then the recording goes straight to YouTube, so you can go to YouTube and watch it right now. But an email will go out tomorrow just reminding you for the link and where to find it if you've forgotten. So thanks for joining me today. I hope that little bundle of weird hidden stuff was useful and will help make your life a bit easier. So take care and enjoy the weekend when it gets here. Bye now.